Please consider supporting Black Women United YEG for the protection and advancement of black women and girls in Alberta. You can learn more about them at bwunited.ca. They are always looking for donations and volunteers. So please, again, support Black Women United YEG for the protection and advancement of black women and girls in Alberta. Again, that website is bwunited.ca.
Hi, I'm Jed Bodwin, and I live in Wichita, Kansas. I am a Patreon supporter for Creative Control. I discovered Creative Control some years ago, I think maybe while looking for interviews with Tommy Stinson of The Replacements. And I stumbled across this conversation that Vish had with Tommy Stinson that was really insightful. Vish held his own. I think Tommy can be a little bit of a difficult interview at times. And it went really well, and it really got into some areas that I wasn't expecting. And I thought, gosh, I have to listen to more of this guy and his podcast. Sometimes I'm not necessarily a fan of the music or musicians that Vish will have on the show, but I always appreciate their creative process a little bit more. And more times than not, though, it does lead me to finding a new musical artist that I'm interested in, or to think a little bit differently about maybe some artists whose work I've overlooked. So, go ahead, and if you've been waiting at all to support Vish and Creative Control, now is probably the best time to do it. I know as a public radio employee here in Kansas, listener-supported broadcasting, whether it's podcasts or radio itself, really isn't a thing of the past. It's actually very much a thing of both the present and the future. So, yay Vish, yay Creative Control.
To make your flexible monthly donation to Creative Control, please visit patreon.com/Creative Control today.
Ariel Sherritt and Matthias Kalm are gifted and resilient musicians, songwriters, singers, producers, and artists based on Prince Edward Island. For close to 20 years, Kalm has been tending to the business of being the Burning Hell as the band's founder, primary lyricist, and only original member. In the past decade, his life partner, Sherritt, has become the second most consistent member of the Burning Hell, whose prolific and impressive discography and relentless road work have gained them fans all over the world. The band's stellar 9th album is called Garbage Island and was released on June 24th, 2022 via You've Changed Records in Canada and BB Island Records outside of Canada. As such, Ariel and Matthias returned to this show, this time to discuss their lives on Prince Edward Island and their dog, the Kevin Costner film Waterworld and its impact on the post-apocalyptic future vibe all over the acceptingly hopeful songs on the conceptual Garbage Island, the Pacific Trash Vortex, recycling the things that people make, and birds, how music can exist and touring can occur during a pandemic and during climate change, the B-52s and New Wave, upcoming live shows, other future plans, and much more. A part of the Entertainment One Network with the support of listeners like you who follow and subscribe to this podcast and spread the word about it and make flexible monthly donations at patreon.com/Creative Control, plus in-kind support from Pizza Trocadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee in Guelph, Ontario, and Granddad's Donuts in Hamilton, Ontario. This is episode 696 of Creative Control, featuring the lovely and talented Ariel Sherritt and Matthias Kalm of the Burning Hell, with your host, me, Vish Khanna. Hello, the Burning Hell. Are you there?
What's up, Vish?
Nice to have you both here. Ariel, how are you?
I am very well, thank you. Thanks so much for having us on.
Oh, it's lovely to have you back on the show. It's been too long. I sincerely mean that. It's been far too long, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry. First of all, let me apologize. It's been too long. It's my fault. It's no one's fault but mine. Where in the world are you, Ariel?
I am in Prince Edward Island in a small hamlet called Fairfield, population 4. That's 2 of us and 2 neighbors.
Really? Is that what the sign says? Population 4?
It doesn't have a population sign. Our property taxes are not paying for that.
Okay, I see. Wow, that must be. I mean, this day and age, a lot of us have been used to living isolated lives, but living among just 4 people. What if you don't get along with it? Do you get along with the other 2 people? I know we're going on the record here.
Yeah,
okay, good.
we do. Yeah, they're a really lovely couple. I think they're in their 80s now, and they've just been farming and fishing for years and kind of self-sufficient, and they're so kind and generous, and we love them. So we're very lucky with our neighbors.
Oh, very nice. That's lovely. And what is your day in PEI looking like beyond our conversation? Is it going to be a good day? Do you have big plans?
It's gonna be a great day. It's a little rainy here, which is kind of great for the garden. Matthias has been working hard getting that going, and we have some asparagus that we need to eat tonight. And I've been working a little bit for CHMA, so I'm going to do a bit of that work. And yeah, it's going to be a great day.
That's the college radio station in PEI, or in Charlottetown?
It's in Sackville.
Oh, the one in Sack. Yeah, right. What am I talking about? It's in Sackville, New Brunswick. So you're doing work from PEI, which is a province. For those people around the world, PEI stands for Prince Edward Island. It is one of Canada's provinces. Nearby is New Brunswick on land, and that is how close is New Brunswick to where you are?
It's about 2.5 hours. We're kind of at the end of the island,
right?
Which is also on land,
right? Right. Sorry, and then
I like that.
But then you take there's the bridge, or you take a ship, some sort of boat.
Yeah, we would take the bridge if we were going to Sackville. So it's a 15-kilometer bridge. It's the longest bridge over water that freezes in the world.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
And then Sackville's just kind of half an hour after that.
So you work remotely, or do you go into Sackville to do your work?
I work remotely.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. And is that going well?
It's great. Yeah, it's really fun. I love being involved in radio again. When I was at university, and so it's nice.
It is a bit of a gateway to the world we live in. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, it's nice to get an update and see you and hear you. Matthias, you're there somewhere. Where in the world are you?
I am also in Fairfield, Prince Edward Island. I'm one of the 4, and I'm also enjoying a kind of gentle rain day.
Nice.
I'm doing a little bit of gardening. When we finish this, I'm going to go out and do some more planting, I think, because it's a nice soft rain, nice to plant in this. And that's what my day is like.
That sounds very relaxing. Now, you both have said a population of 4, but you have a dog. Is the dog part of the population? Is that in the census?
Human population of 4, yeah.
A human population of 4 and a dog population of 1.
Mm-hmm.
Just one dog in the whole hamlet?
In the whole hamlet.
That is a lonely dog. What do? The dog, you take the dog for walks and it doesn't see other dogs, so you don't have... Most people, when they take their dog for a walk, it's chaos because there's always other dogs, and then the dogs have a weird communication thing where they don't just say hello, they lose their minds. So your dog has true. No... Does your dog...
She finds other ways to lose her mind.
Imagine being part of a species and you're like, am I the only one of me ever?
That's true.
Like the dog has no idea that they're part of a team. That's amazing.
This actually kind of explains a lot about her personality.
Yes.
I haven't thought about this before.
Yeah, because they socialize and they learn from one another and what's going on in their butts for some reason. I don't know why they're always obsessed with everyone's butt. But
I think there's a lot of information there. Yeah.
Well, I've heard that, but I don't. The dogs know something about butts that we don't quite know. And anyway, your dog, has no idea. He's getting no news. He's getting no butt news. Sorry. He's getting a little.
She doesn't get to check the.
This is already taking a weird turn.
It's taking an odd turn, and I'm sorry, but I realize you have a lonely dog. And what's the dog's name? We should give the dog a name.
Her name's Ruthie.
Ruthie. Oh well, I've seen Ruthie on Instagram, I think, and other socials. Ruthie seems nice. So that's good. Yeah, you're having a nice little time. That's good. Well, it's as I say, it's lovely to have you both on the show. Celebrate this wonderful new record that has been playing on a loop in my family home and in the van. So thank you for making Garbage Island. It's great. I want to begin with Matthias in terms of what's going on with this record. It seems to me to be a concept record. I was sent some information that suggests it's set in the not-so-distant future, but it seems a little more distant to me. What do you want to say about Garbage Island on the whole there, Matthias?
It is a concept record. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Kevin Costner film Waterworld.
I'm familiar with it. I never saw it. It bombed so hard that I thought I'm going to avoid it. Sometimes when something makes the news like that, you have morbid curiosity, but I had none.
Oh, well, you should definitely watch it. I think it was unfairly treated by critics, and it did form the kind of kernel of the beginning of this album. So I owe a debt to Kevin Costner, because at the same time that I was reading the news about Garbage Island, the actual Garbage Island, aka the Pacific Trash Vortex, I was watching Waterworlds and thinking about a future in which maybe we all live on a garbage island. And of course, the real Pacific Trash Vortex is a swirling, constantly moving mass of microplastics and other marine debris. But I sort of imagine what would happen if that congeals eventually into an actual landmass, and that's where the remnants of our civilization end up living. And that's kind of what the record is about.
I see. Ariel, how did you contribute to these motifs exactly lyrically? You have some remarkable vocals on here that get in my head all the time, and some very interesting approaches. But lyrically, did you contribute as well? Conceptually, did you contribute?
I did not really contribute lyrically. That is Matthias's wheelhouse. I did, however, co-produce and record the album, and I played multiple instruments on the record, a lot of synthesizers and drums and whatnot.
Are any of those instruments particularly new for you?
Yeah. I mean, I started playing drums after for our 2017 record, Revival Beach. So that's still pretty new for me. Jake played a lot of the drums too. I mean, it was really like a built kind of record, more than we've ever done before. A lot of kind of adding little parts here and there through a number of months. And then, I've been playing bass live now with the record, and so that's been fun. I mean, I like to take on new challenges.
Yeah, and you seem really great at all of them. That, from what I can tell, just so we're clear, and we've established this probably in your previous appearances, but the Burning Hell has taken many forms in terms of membership right across the world. There are people who can claim that they were once or are in forever the Burning Hell. I think that's fair to say. Matthias, who is currently in the band? All alumni notwithstanding, who could pop in at any point, including myself, I should say. Do I count, Matthias?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. I count as a member or alumnus. Sorry, who took part in this record, and then further to that, who's kind of in the band right now?
So this record was mostly written and produced by myself and Ariel and Jake Nickel. And Darren Brown also played a little bit on it. Our friend Judd Haynes in Newfoundland, Kelly McMichael, Mara Pallerin, Ariel's brother Jesse, and Ariel's dad Steve.
Krista Power and Janina McGilvery.
Krista Power and Janina McGilvery. So a lot of different people added bits. But it's mostly Ariel and Jake and I, and that is the touring band most of the time.
Yeah, and is this the first self-produced record you guys have made?
It is for the Burning Hell. So the last Ariel Sheridan Matthias Calm record we did in 2020, we recorded and produced that ourselves, and that was the first time that we had done that. And then, so this one was we had a little more confidence to take on a bigger kind of Burning Hell project, because the Ariel Sheridan Matthias Calm stuff is more folky duets, a little bit easier to manage. But Jake is obviously, I mean, he's a great producer and engineer, and he was amazing. And so we were recording in St. John's, and Jake was actually stuck on his family farm in Ontario throughout the kind of bulk of the lockdown periods. And so we were recording stuff in St. John's at Jake's usual studio, and then sending it to him on the farm, where he built a bunch of compressors and set up all this recording gear in an old sheep pen, and then eventually kind of built himself converted a 1970s camper trailer into a solar powered recording studio, which is where the album was mixed. So yeah, it's the first self-produced Burning Hell record, and it was a really awesome experience. I loved it.
As you're talking about the process, I actually hear a lot of lyrical allusions to some of the things you're talking about. So Matthias, I'm just curious, did the actual process, this is sort of, forgive me if this sounds convoluted, because normally a band would practice and work on their songs, and they would go and record them. But as Ariel's talking, and maybe you can illuminate what I'm getting at so I don't spoil it, but if the solar-powered studio camper van, like there's a solar powered van on the record, I don't know if there's a sheep pen, but this notion of discarded and recyclable stuff, like that's a motif, I think. So sorry, Matthias, chronologically, did the process itself actually alter your storytelling as a songwriter on this record?
100%. That's a very astute observation, Vish.
Oh, well, thank you. I pride myself on such things. No.
A few of the songs were written before the recording process started, but a lot of them were written kind of during the flow of the recording. And there's no question that the process and the technology that we're using influenced the lyrics. And then in some cases also the lyrics influenced the process. So, for example, on Bird Queen of Garbage Island, we used actual garbage to make a sort of ASMR-inspired interlude or breakdown. And in another case, Jake used a bunch of old metal garbage that was lying around the farm as percussion, and so on. So it was sort of a back and forth process of mutual influence between lyrics and process, I guess.
I see. Yeah, I don't know that I figured something was up on the record in terms of its temporality, but I think it really hit home for, like, early on, I mean, on the record. I figured it wasn't maybe meant to reflect this current time, but it also felt like very contemporary. But then by Dirty Microphones, and again, I don't want to ruin anything for anyone, but I think that's the whole point of this show, is to ruin albums.
Yeah.
and just spill the beans so that people are like, oh, I guess my brain is not necessary for processing this work and this art. This guy just told me everything. So sorry, that was just a little disclaimer. Push pause if you want to dig into the record yourself right now and come back to us when you're done. But Dirty Microphones has allusions to things where I'm like, I didn't catch it the first time, where you say playing South by Southwest 56, I think is the line. And then I was like, 56, what does that mean? Like the 56th edition? But then I looked at the lyric sheet and it's got the little sky comma, the apostrophe beside 56. I'm like, oh, it's, and in my brain, in our brains, that might mean 1956. And then, I'm just telling you how stupid I am, because my brain had to do these gymnastics. Wait, South by Southwest didn't exist in 1956? Oh, he must mean 2056. That's what that probably means. That's the South by Southwest that they're talking about. So that song has this, like you always have, I think, Matthias, this sort of cheery, sardonic thing going on. Cheery and sardonic, I don't know if those are mutually exclusive. It's sardonic, but it has this uplifting, like, oh, whimsical. It's got whimsy, is what I'm getting at. But then my wife, Michelle, whom you both know, I think, I was making breakfast for the kids and that song was playing. She's like, man, this is so sad. This is the saddest song of all time. I was like, yeah, it is pretty sad. Matthias, just so we can give some people some more context, and like I say, ruin the whole album. Tell me more about that microphone. Tell me more about that song, Dirty Microphones, and maybe what kind of place it sets on the record. Because it shows up, I have it here. I think it shows up. Yeah, it's the fourth song in. So you've dug into some sort of weird landscape. But that song for me, anyway, it's not a centerpiece, but is that a key song for you on this record?
It is. And This album is loosely chronological. No Peace, the first song, is intended to reflect the time that we're living in right now. And then by the time we get to Dirty Microphones, we're into an era where a band in the future, maybe, I don't know, in around 2060 or so, is feeling nostalgic for the days when they used to be able to go on tour in a time when things are still very obviously kind of post-apocalyptic according to our current idea of what that might look like. So it's kind of just playing with nostalgia and a sense of missing music as a way of life, and it in that way is also very much inspired by the pandemic.
Yeah, so you're saying that our conception of post-apocalypse life is maybe, I don't know if you said this, but it feels more accurate. Like it sort of has always been this mythical thing. Like what would it'd be like The Road by Cormac McCarthy or something.
Yes.
But then everything is pointing to that being actually true. Like all the sci-fi writers, the dystopian writers who we are like, oh yeah, this is like weird, depressing escapism. It's happening now. Is that kind of your feeling with us?
Absolutely. But I also think that we have culturally focused way too much on dystopia. Maybe we're going to end up in a version of The Road, but there's also a chance that we might end up in a version that looks a little bit more like Station 11.
Right.
Where there's lots of terrible things that happen, lots of things to be upset about, but also we could maybe create a future that includes a little bit of hope.
Well, okay.
So I'm not sure exactly where we're going, but I absolutely think you're right that a lot of the things that we were warned about by sci-fi authors and filmmakers for the last however many decades are now coming to pass.
I can't tell if it's self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, how is it possible that they could be this prescient? Like, there must be something to it. I mean, there is science in sci-fi. Maybe they did some digging and was like, okay, if we lived like this for like 50 years, what would it actually mean? And I think that's what's happened. I might be giving them too much credit, but it seems odd to me how close it is to what's actually happening right now. Ariel, you guys had the very unfortunate experience actually recently. Like, as I hear this refrain, we used to play music. And I don't want to tell me if this is a HIPAA violation or whatever it's called in the States. You had to cancel a tour recently, right?
We did, yeah, halfway through our Eastern Canadian tour.
Tell the folks at home, if you don't mind, why you had to cancel the tour.
Right. Well, I mean, like almost every other band on the road in April, we contracted COVID-19. You may have heard of it, and obviously just had to cancel half of our tour and head home, which was a drag.
Yeah. My friend and yours, Matthias Kalm, who isn't here right now, and I were exchanging some texts after this. I was just checking in to say, how you doing? Mm-hmm. And I got the sense, Matthias, forgive me if this is telling tales out of school, but I got the impression that there was a real resignation that touring life was never going to be the same, if it should even occur. Matthias, I don't want to misconstrue what you said. Does that capture your vibe at the time?
I think it captures my vibe.
Right. Is that still your vibe? You were in the midst of, I think, the illness at the time. So obviously, I'm sure all of your frustration was compounded by anxiety and morbid stinking thinking. I think it's called stinking thinking. So you were probably just like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, how can we do this anymore? Like really looking down the road. Mm-hmm. So again, I don't want to misconstrue it, but Matthias, before I go to Ariel on this, but Matthias, was that roughly, am I capturing where you were at the time?
Where my head was at, absolutely. And I think one of the side effects of COVID that doesn't get talked about enough is like just how negative it makes you while you have it, because it sucks. Even after 3 shots and everything else, it still sucks. And I was absolutely feeling pretty dark about the possibility that touring could be a part of life again. And I'm feeling actually still pretty dark about that, but also positive as well. It's kind of forced us to start rethinking what touring could look like. So not so much never happening again, but how can we use this collectively? I'm speaking of all of us. How can we use this as people in the music industry, in arts in general? How can we use this moment to sort of reinvent what arts and entertainment looks like in the context of music? What can we do to touring to change it? That could also maybe address some of the environmental issues that we're all thinking about right now. And Ariel, I know, has a lot to
I was
say
gonna
about this,
I was gonna suggest we bookmark that because I want to come back to it, but I want to go to Ariel for that stuff. If you want to expand upon it, please do. But I also want to get your sense. You had it too, and you, I'm sure, were going through this, myriad emotions about not only like I'm sick, what does that mean for me, but like my whole vocational pursuit is based on putting myself in these circumstances for the rest of my life. Like, can I do this? So can you capture your feelings at the time and within that, how you're feeling now?
Sure. Yeah, so at the time, we definitely were feeling pretty bleak about everything. That was the third tour that we had canceled because of COVID. It was the first time we got it, but first we were in Australia when the pandemic was declared, and that tour got cut short. We had multiple reschedulings. I mean, it's every band's story, but having it happen again and then this time getting really sick was really, it did feel incredibly bleak for a while. And it still does some days. I mean, it is hard to imagine a future because for so long, live music was talked about as, okay, well, musicians can't make money from recorded music anymore, but at least they can tour. And so seeing touring becoming such a scary thing going into the future. I get sick on tour every time, no matter what. And so kind of looking at like getting even more sick and the ethical implications of like doing this kind of thing, traveling around whilst sick, all of that just was like, okay, well, we just can't do this anymore. During that time, actually, Matthias and I went on my radio show on CHMA and kind of had a talk about this, which I thought was pretty interesting. And Matthias, of course, knows so much about the history of music. And it was interesting to think about the historical dimensions of this, of touring and presenting live music, and just how many people, how many different genres have been founded when there wasn't spaces or safe spaces to be presenting your music in. And people have been incredibly creative, whether, that's block parties, hip hop in the early 80s, or like Jamaican sound systems, or ravers in the UK in the 80s. I mean, or, Riot Grrrl, whatever. Like, there's just such a long history of really creative responses to unsafe working conditions in music. And so I think as we have recovered from COVID, we have tried to take inspiration from all of these artists who have adjusted in various ways, and imagine, what is our Station 11 kind of touring Shakespeare troupe of a band going to do at South by Southwest 56 or whatever. Yeah.
And I mean, again, not to ruin anything, but like that song refers to the coast of Ohio.
Yes.
So acknowledging that the climate is changing and the world will change even. I appreciate those thoughts. So can we expand upon it? Because I have ideas and notions about what could occur to improve those things. But based on what Ariel just said, Matthias, have you had it sounds like you did have a fruitful conversation, but what do you, if you could push a button and change the material conditions of touring musicians during this pandemic and beyond, what would you like to see change?
I think that Ariel alluded to this already, but the risk that falls on the shoulders of mostly musicians, but other people in the music industry as well, venue owners, managers, everyone else that depends on this system, that risk needs to be mitigated somehow. And whatever we can do to think about alternative ways of structuring touring life, I'm torn because on the one hand, I really do believe that we need to stop moving around as much. But on the other hand, I think that part of what is magical about live music is that you do move around and that you do experience yourself as an artist, you experience different places, and you kind of take other people on that journey with you in some way. So I don't want to lose the privilege of movement, but I think that we need to reimagine what it looks like. So to give you an example of something we've been talking about doing, and it sounds a little outlandish, but we've done some outlandish stuff in the past, so it's kind of in our wheelhouse. We've talked about a canal boat tour in the UK, which is a place we go a lot, where all of our stuff is on the canal boat, and you can only go 4 miles an hour. That's as fast as you can go. And we go 4 miles an hour down the canals of the UK, and we play a show wherever we end up at the end of that day. And the audience maybe comes from the local area, and they come to see us, and maybe those shows are small, but we are in that way limiting our movement and also limiting the risk, because those shows would be outdoors. I'm talking about the risk in terms of COVID right now. And that's just one idea, and maybe it's crazy, but it's one possibility. But I think that ultimately what we need to do is just figure out a way that the risk does not get shouldered almost entirely by the people who are making the music in the first place.
No, I agree. I'm not sure about the movement thing in terms of climate stuff. I think you're right about. I mean, that's what you're getting at, like burning all this jet fuel and gasoline to get us around. Technology doesn't quite exist to be able to do those things. Like a touring band can't drive an electric car. Certainly across Canada, you get nowhere, because what I'm getting at is there's only, a 400 kilometer charge or something like that. Plus, I don't actually know the full implications of what taxing the electrical grid, if you will, does environmentally either. So that's an interesting point of this, the movement part and the touring part. Ariel, one of the things I mentioned to Matthias, we had a call the other day, and I've said it to a few people, and I don't know how realistic it is. And I can say it because I don't, from a very privileged place, I'm not affected as a musician, but like in my mind, I'm like, should we all just behave like the Yukon and be like a spring, summer, fall arts and culture economy so that all events can happen outside? Because that seems to be where people get it, when they go right now, as we're speaking in Canada, most of us aren't eligible for that fourth booster. Are we at fourth shot? The next booster, the second booster? I don't know how to. So I'm like, okay. And as I'm speaking to you, from what I can tell, the vaccine efficacy that we've built, it's gone. Like, it's basically gone, and there's no mass. Like, we're basically just like freeballing it now, if I may use a crass term. And so then you're like, why? I hear a lot of disappointment on your record. I always hear a little bit of disappointment I hear hope and disappointment in people on all of Matthias's songs.
Yeah.
Matthias, is that fair?
Absolutely. I think it's a fun record.
It's great. It's fantastic. It's really fun.
I also think it's a very hopeful record.
Yes,
but there's no question that there's a lot of despair in there as well. It's a mishmash.
Where I was coming from, though, is like, I don't know if we have the moral fortitude to do what I'm proposing. But Ariel, what do you make of that idea? Like, what if we could get to a place where we decide we hunker down culturally, like in terms of cultural economy, it's going to be a rough winter, but you kind of hunker down and wait till you can go out and play outside and find the boats and what, I don't know, but I can't swim, so I would not go see you on a boat. Oh, I guess you're not saying we would come on the boat.
No, you'd be on the land.
I'd be on the land, so that's good.
Yes.
That's good. But anyway, I'll learn to swim at some point in my life. Sure, why not? But I'm not buoyant. I don't know, Ariel. I can't float. It's some bone density. I don't know what it is. Fear. It's tension. It's tension and fear and bone density. I just sink like a stone.
Right. You have to relax.
I can't relax. Muscles. Yeah, I talked to Julie Dwarin about this the last time, because she's like a swim fiend and an instructor and all these things. I'm like, I think it's because I tense up. And I think my body's like, yeah, you're not floating mode. Anyway, enough about me and my floating and lack of floating ability. Ariel, what do you make of that? What if we figured out a way to just be outdoor people?
Yeah, well, this is something that I've definitely been talking to a lot of people about. And I think that some of that will happen naturally. We usually tour in the falls, and we've moved our release tour kind of into September, early October rather than later, which we might have done before, because I mean, we are playing in traditional inside venues, but still hoping to avoid a kind of COVID surge that might happen as we head into winter. As for outdoor stuff, yeah, well, I mean, we've decided that for the release party for our album, we are just going to have a party with our friends and use the solar powered camper that Jake built to power that, and just have it down by the shore. And so we are interested in exploring more outdoor venues. And as you say about electric vehicles, obviously, you know, every action that we take with regard to climate these days has a bazillion other add-ons in terms of, you know, lithium mining or
other waste.
Where the electricity is coming from. So there's no, like, we're not in a position to like do everything perfectly, but I do think, you know, maybe, using that 400-kilometer radius as a kind of self-limiting factor could be an interesting thing that we might see with touring. I love the idea about all ages shows and maybe hauling the camper around and putting some of them on. You know, outdoor shows can be all ages, and I think that that's something that I've really been missing. Playing constantly in bars, you do limit your audience so much to people who feel comfortable in those spaces, whether that's COVID or alcohol or age or whatever kind of limiting factors there are there. So I do love the idea of doing things outside. I also think, you know, I hope that these kind of grimy nightlife spaces don't get lost, because I do think that they have provided tons of spaces for like really interesting and transgressive art to take place. Like, not everything has to be an outdoor family picnic also.
But I will, and so, I will say cynically, if I may, straight edge Vish.
Yeah.
We have been beholden to this alcohol-based economy. Like, I'm trying to think, like you guys were alluding to the fact earlier that people, and we've all experienced these makeshift venues, pop-up venues, you know, just alternate, what do they call them? Alternative spaces, right? For music.
Yeah.
When I think about what that means, it's usually like there's not a bar. There's not someone taking your money, making all their money from the beer, and you're just kind of like a lost, like it's a, what is it called? Not a lost leader? Lost leader, right? That's the term?
No.
Yeah.
The band is,
but also like there's this, I'm not saying this is true. We've all played amazing venues with amazing people running them, and I feel badly for all of them. At the same time, you know, I'm sure you've thought about this too philosophically, maybe Ariel working at a radio station, like the entire product line that you manage if you run a radio station is based on cultural creativity. And we don't put a premium on that. It's just sort of this weird, no one really thinks that that's the real fuel, is the musicians for all of these activities. It's just the bottom line stuff. And who cares if...
And musicians are expendable, totally expendable.
But it doesn't make any sense. Like, logically, it doesn't make any sense that the musician would be viewed expendable, because they're creating... When I'm talking about everything. Festivals, radio stations, record store, you know, retail outlets, whatever. Why is the musician, they're the musician or the writer or the whatever, the artist is the one creating all of the content, and you're just packaging it in your own company way and benefiting from it. But really, it's not sorry, I'm going on a bit of a rant. My thing is just that I don't miss bar culture that much, because I never really, it was where the thing was happening. Maybe I get a ginger ale. That's just me personally. Square, unfun Vish.
Yeah.
Saying like, that doesn't matter to me.
No, you know? And I get that. But I also think, like, you know, nightclubs and punk venues and squats and these things that have been built up kind of around whether it's drugs or alcohol have also been like really creative and interesting spaces. Yeah. And so I do think it's interesting what you're saying about the musicians being expendable. And I think maybe it's, you know, another thing is musicians need to own the means of distribution at this point. And I think there's a really interesting campaign that's happening in the UK right now to get concert goers to buy the buildings that a lot of grassroots music venues are in, so that they aren't subjected to landlord increases, so that all of these spaces are collectively owned. And I think that will bode well for the health of a music scene. And I think that's a really radical and cool plan and idea. And I think, I hope we'll see more and more different models of owning that kind of, like, whether it's clubs or outdoor models or different streaming platforms would be great, that really center artists. I know that's pretty hopeful.
No, but it's...
Well, no, I think it's... Oh, sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, it has happened. Like, the fact you're not making this up. Like, people did this in Washington, D.C. People have done this all over the place.
Exactly.
That's where that... I will only quibble that I appreciate what you're saying. Like, these are spaces, the bars, the nightclubs are where the transgressive stuff has happened. But I will go back to my argument that it's the artists who are creating that stuff. It's not necessarily they need a friendly, like, CBGBs. They just need someone who'll take a chance on it. And it's a business. Like, I get it. Like, people want to, like, yeah, we'll do it. Will people come out? And then when people come out, you feel like, okay, we've quid pro quoed this very well. We've set this up so you have a place, and we're making our bar money. But again, and I don't mean to go back to this COVID hysteria stuff. I don't consider it hysteria; it's reality. I just feel like I feel like I'm being painted as a hysteric by some people, being like, I don't go to restaurants. I don't do that stuff anymore. I order takeout. I try to support these places, but I don't go there because I'm like, it seems to me, you take the mask off, and that's where you get the thing. So where I was going to go with that, because I'm all over the place, sorry. Matthias, there is a school of thought that I get sometimes, or that I'm picking up on, because Ariel is alluding to surges and what's the winter maybe going to be like. You both have had it, and there is this, I had a conversation with Kevin Morby, musician, and we were talking along these lines, and he said, oh, wait, you haven't had it, have you? I said, no, I haven't had it. He said, oh, well, that changes everything. When you have it, you kind of, it's not some sort of specter. You've had it. And if he didn't say this, but what I'm reading into it is, if you can get through it and there's no, like, you start to think, oh, maybe it's not that big a deal. So what I'm getting at, Matthias, is you've had it. Has your perspective on it changed about how to go forward? Because as we're speaking, you have booked a new tour, an extensive one, as far as I can tell. Has something altered since you've had it? Has it changed your mind about what it is and whether or not it's as dangerous as it seems to obviously be to most of us? Sorry, leading question, but do you know what I'm getting at?
Let me take a strange route to answering that question. I think that the experience of having COVID personally has not necessarily changed my outlook, but that's because I don't base my opinion on my own personal experience when it comes to an infectious disease. I still base my opinion on science and the collective experience. And I think this ties in with what Ariel was saying and what you're saying too about the future of music venues, is that for so long we've allowed the individualism that's at the heart of capitalism to dictate what we do as artists. We think about ourselves. Every songwriter thinks about themselves and how to get their songs into the right hands or whatever. Every DIY venue manager is thinking about their DIY venue. And we are just so obsessed with the individual that we've lost sight of the fact that we live in a society. And so whether we're talking about the future of music, COVID, whatnot, I think the only hope we have is to remember that we live in a society. And so, no, it hasn't changed my attitude towards what touring might look like going forward. I'm unsure, I'm nervous, but I'm also hopeful that we can collectively figure out a way to make it work.
Well, so I think you and I share a similar outlook in life, in that we are both, we try to maintain optimism, but we're cynical and pessimistic. When things go wrong, we're like, yeah, that makes sense. As much as, oh, that's amazing. That also makes sense. So I think it's a knot we're in, and some of my supposed anxiety is fueled by, I'm trying to reconcile my anger at what's going on right now. because I'm with you, Matthias. Like, I am so distraught about this particular situation highlighting individualism over collective good. But I will tell you, I've had this thought recently. You're being naive, Vish. Like, this is what you've been angry about the whole time. Like, this has been the case. As we're speaking, there are mass shootings happening in the United States. People aren't doing anything about it. They could do things, and the people in power could do things to help the collective good, but they're selfish. They're clinging to power. They're clinging to lobbyists' money, all that stuff. So what I'm getting at is this has crystallized. Ariel, as a person angry at our COVID response and our collective behavior now, because I will just say people seem to have given up and the thing hasn't gotten better. It's getting worse and worse. Am I wrong to be upset at this point, or as upset? Should I be letting go of this? Please help me. This is now becoming a therapy session for me. But please, Ariel, what do you think of, like, in terms of the context we're talking about, music and gatherings? Because I've gone to a couple of shows and I felt selfish doing it. I'll tell you that. That was it. I feel a little bit of guilt that I'm in a fortunate position that I can, and also that I made it out. I just went on a trip to Tulsa, Oklahoma for completely selfish reasons. Like, I was invited to go to the Bob Dylan Center. And it was everyone was like, I was like, I don't think I should go. It seems selfish and stupid. And people are like, what? It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. You got invited to this VIP grand opening. Think of the people you'll meet and all that stuff. And I'm like, that seems selfish, but I did it. So I'm complicit in this. Anyway, Ariel, am I wrong to feel disappointed, but also guilty about living a normal life right now?
No, I mean, I feel that way constantly about climate or about, any myriad of my like little kind of semi-middle class indulgences. I think we live in a world that makes us hypocrites constantly, and that makes us feel both angry and guilty. And so I don't think you're wrong. Not at all. I mean, that is maybe the dominant mode of life in 2022 is feeling those exact feelings, whether it's COVID or climate. I mean, we're all making our own little indulgences at the expense of other people and of the planet constantly, and it's awful. And I don't know how to soothe that feeling, but maybe Matthias does. I think.
Well, I can turn that around. I think.
Okay,
you went to Tulsa and you feel guilty about it.
I felt. It's not lingering, but I felt so badly because even the flight from Denver to Tulsa, the first attempt at it was, they told us they couldn't land the plane because the weather was so bad. They could see it, but they made us do it anyway to see if they could sneak in. But they couldn't, so they turned us back around very late at night back to Tulsa. And I was like, oh my God, I already felt so terrible, but the jet fuel that was burning for me to get to Tulsa, they just made a completely useless trip. So I'm having this, like, what I'm getting at, and I appreciate your response, Ariel. There's not really an obvious answer, but Matthias, where I'm coming from is, I probably already had these kinds of feelings, guilt, rage, disappointment, frustration about myriad things. But why am I so fixated on this pandemic as a crystallizing moment to heighten my hesitation of engaging with parts of society and fun that I used to? Is it just the pandemic? Is it just COVID fear? Because I have a family and we've been lucky. We've been trying to stay safe, but I think it's a fool's errand to assume you're not going to get this thing at some point, particularly just the way we're all behaving and the lack of, like I say, they were pretty like clockwork. Vaccinations, booster. It just seems masks, social distancing. Everything seems to have stopped. So, sorry. That's where I'm coming from.
But I think you maybe feel extra feelings about COVID because, I don't want to speak for you here, but in my opinion, it's like, it's something that we all feel we have a personal stake in a way that we can kind of touch and see. There's like individual actions we can do that actually do make a difference, and we can see that difference. You know, if I go out and don't wear a mask and I'm not vaccinated and all that stuff, my chances of getting COVID are very high. Whereas I can do these other things, to mitigate that. Whereas with like climate stuff, for example, or like political issues, we sometimes get the sense that our actions, our individual actions, don't matter quite as much.
Yeah.
So maybe, if you weren't on that plane to Tulsa, that flight would still be happening. So you could think about it that way. But also, I think that doing things that might make you feel a little bit guilty for the sake of producing something that could add beauty to the world. You went to the Bob Dylan Center and that became a podcast episode.
Yes, it's true.
We spent what you might consider an indulgent amount of time making this album, but who knows, what these songs might mean to some people. Same goes for putting on shows.
Yeah, it's true.
I think like thinking about the collective possibility of action is really important. Actually, speaking of your podcast, I listened the other day to your interview with Atsuko
Okatsuka.
Yeah. And I wasn't familiar with her. I don't know her comedy at all, but she said something really powerful about the film Paddington 2.
Yeah.
And it's a film I think it's the Citizen Kane of our generation. It's one of the greatest films of all time for sure.
Yeah.
And she makes a very good point about it being a parable for immigration, but also it's a story about collective action, the power of collective action. Paddington's adoptive family, Paddington's neighborhood in London. Even, I don't want to spoil it for people, but Paddington spends some time in the big house in that film, and Paddington's prison experience. It's all a story about the power of collective action. And I think that we need to harness the spirit of Paddington 2 in tapping into that collectivity and remember that what we make and what we send out into the world can have a galvanizing effect and can kind of bring us all together in very unexpected and powerful ways. I'm not saying that that's going to happen all the time, but there is that possibility.
Yeah, like the carceral stuff in Paddington as it relates to the immigration stuff, the refugee stuff. I mean, yeah, Atsuko made some very valid points, but then as I recall from that prison sequence, Paddington is able to establish connection via cultural difference by making people
Absolutely.
a meal that they weren't like expecting. So then it becomes this very, I really liked that chat with Atsuko, and it did help, or rather it was mind blowing about Paddington in particular. Like, oh, it was right under my nose and I didn't even see all these things. So I appreciate you listening to that and pointing it out. And I appreciate what you're saying. It is probably why I do what I'm doing right now here with you. Like I do want to I do think we can make positive change happen by having conversations and making stuff. Speaking of making stuff, the things that people make is an older Burning Hell song, and it's become this Easter egg, I think, maybe. Certainly on this record. I can't pin it down. Ariel, is that song referenced a lot throughout the catalog? It comes up a couple times on this record, but can you think of other examples?
Well, I mean, there's the original, The Things That People Make, and then there's The Things That People Make Part 2, and The Things That People Make Part 3, and then yes, on this album,
I think there's at least two allusions to it.
Yeah.
Is there two? I'm thinking of the one in All I Need, which, yeah.
There's the end of the last normal day has a reference to it in the chorus.
Right. Okay. Oh, of course it does. Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
So
yeah, that's true.
So that has always struck me as a very hopeful idea of Matthias's. I like the things that people make. It seems to be an umbrella concept maybe for the Burning Hell. Matthias, is that fair?
I think that my opinion has changed in some ways over the years. The original song, which is, 15 years old now or so, was really, I guess, a celebration of the mundane, actual things. I'm talking about like physical things that we make, whether that's casserole dishes or ukuleles or plumber snakes or whatever. Just giving some cred to those objects and how wonderful and beautiful they are. And now, in the context of this record, I'm thinking about this kind of accumulation of things, the sense that our world has become like a hoarder's house on the television show Hoarders. And we need to have an intervention and say, hang on a second, we got to stop making all this crap and focus on, like Marie Kondoing our planet. And so I guess my opinion about, I still love some things, but I'm much more interested in the things that people say and do than the things that people make these days.
Well, as you're pondering a literal garbage island, I assume that's where oh, wait a minute, these are the things that people also make.
Yeah.
And we have so many things that we make. What the hell are we doing? So your mode has really shifted to resource preservation, or rather resource recycling, I guess, at this point, right? Like you guys, did you build this house that I'm looking at on your own, basically?
It was a 200-year-old house, and we rebuilt it. It was almost falling in.
That's remarkable. And you just did it, right? You just DIY'd the hell out of it. You probably watched some YouTube videos or something?
So many YouTube videos. Yeah.
that is the spirit within, like, you guys are punks. Like, that's incredible, if I may say. Like, that's an amazing thing that you were able to do and the drive you had to do it. I just want to commend you. And I think on some level, I hear that kind of advocating for that kind of mentality on this record. Is that fair, Matthias?
Absolutely. I think we all depend far too much on systems and knowledge that we just decide are beyond our control and beyond our reach and beyond our grasp. But in a lot of cases, we can learn how to do these things. And, in terms of renovating a house, anyone can learn to do this stuff. And maybe we will fail again and again before we get it right. And that's definitely true in the case of this house. We have failed many times and then had to do things over, and that's part of the learning process.
No, I mean, I will say, for all the dour, down stuff that I invoked here, I do appreciate your commitment and passion for the human spirit. I mean, that comes across in everything you both do. So I really appreciate that. There's a song on this record called Bird Queen of Garbage Island that I need to talk about a little bit, if that's okay. First of all, where did this notion of a Bird Queen of Garbage Island come from, Matthias? I'll go to you first.
Again, I'm going to pay tribute to the great film Waterworld. And as you don't know, because you haven't seen this great film, Kevin Costner's character in this film has somehow, in a one-generation miracle of evolution, developed gills.
Oh.
Which enable him to...
Spoiler alert, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, that you find that out. It's not much of a spoiler because you find that out right away in the film.
Well, I found it out before I even watched the film right now, so thanks.
He can swim around and discover what's below the surface of the water, which I won't spoil.
You did it again. You just did too. It's fine. You can figure out a way to talk about this movie so I don't have to watch it. That would actually make my life easier. Thank you.
No, you have to watch it.
Okay.
Anyway, so Kevin Costner is this sort of future mutant. And I was thinking about Garbage Island. If the Pacific Trash Vortex and all of the other trash vortexes that are currently actually circulating in the world's oceans, if they do coagulate into a real landmass, what kind of creatures will live there? Maybe the remnants of human civilization, probably a lot of bird life. And then eventually, probably some sort of mutation, bird-human character. But what I like about the Bird Queen is that it's unclear whether she is an actual bird-human mutant or whether it's just a human dressed up as a bird, or perhaps a bird dressed up as a human. I never thought about that until right now. But there's this idea that in a utopian version of Garbage Island, there will be no leadership. It will be a self-governing society where everyone kind of figures out how to get along and get through life.
With a queen.
But then
with a queen.
Inevitably, some sort of tyrannical figure will try and take power, and that's where the Bird Queen comes in.
I see. Okay.
But it's unclear about how that's taking place.
I appreciate what you're saying about that song. There are allusions on this record to bands like the B-52s on the song Empty World. There's an allusion to XTC with Nigel the Gannett. Am I saying that correct? Gannett?
Mm-hmm.
Gannett.
There's lots of birds.
Lots of birds.
Lots of birds. Because I think Matthias, you're recognizing that birds are going to be here even if we're not, somehow.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I appreciate that too. They've been around a long time. I bring up the XTC and B-52s references in particular because this record does have, for lack of a better term, a new wave bent. Ariel, the vocal approach that you take on Bird Queen of Garbage Island is remarkable, first of all. It's a little mystifying. I don't know what you're saying. I had to look at the lyric sheet. I don't know what the hell. Talk about that. Sorry, every time I hear it, I picture all of you working on it and laughing at what you've come up with. And forgive me if that's disparaging in any way. Maybe you're very serious artists and you don't chuckle. Tell me about that vocal part, your vocal contribution to that song, and whether or not you are in fact representing the Bird Queen of Garbage Island.
Yeah, I mean, I always picture it as maybe I'm the bird subject, you know, like I feel like that vocal line is a smaller bird than the Bird Queen herself. Yeah, so I do remember working on that in the studio because we did record this when we were able to be recording with Jake, and we kind of constructed it all together. And I remember going in for multiple vocal takes and just kind of trying to sing it in my normal voice and then realizing that the song and the line called for something a little stranger. So it is the most high-pitched cartoon voice that I could come up with. And it was very funny to do. It is what the line is, the coordinates of Garbage Island, of the Pacific Trash Vortex.
Oh, is it the legitimate coordinates?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And it's like a call and response between you and Matthias, which makes it even funnier to me.
Yes.
Right. So, Matthias, are you upset that I found this humorous?
No, not at all. We found it very funny in the studio. We laugh a lot in the studio, and I think that comes through on a lot of these songs.
Even the guitar parts on that, I could see them being fun to make, particularly as it gets going, because it has... Sorry, I didn't really flesh this out, but do you, Matthias, was new wave conceptually? Was new wave as a genre signifier an inspiration on this record? Definitely,
and I think it always kind of has been, but it's just never come out as much as it does on this record. I mean, the B-52s are one of both Ariel and I's favorite bands.
Well, the vocal part that I was just alluding to reminds me of them. I assume that's a clear homage.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. And also, like Tom Tom Club was another big touch point. Lots of different... I mean, as we might have talked about, my first love in music was Men Without Hats.
Mm-hmm. Of course,
And I always kind of go back to those sorts of sounds as my ideal musical goal. And I don't know.
But it's very eclectic. Like all I need, I'm not sure if you would count them as an influence, but all I need reminds me of the Sadies, like very specifically. I know for some folks that might be, well, the Sadies sound like so-and-so and so-and-so, so what does that even mean? But I think they had a very distinctive sound. I'm sure you came across them at various festivals in your time. But yeah, like all I'm getting at, and if you want, you can talk about whether or not they stick out for you. But I just want to highlight for people who haven't heard it yet, it's a very eclectic record, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's little musical touchstones throughout it that are pretty all over the map, I guess. But that's just reflective of how much of a collaborative record it is, too. I mean, I've got my personal musical heroes that I love, and Ariel has hers, and Jake has his, and then of course all of our contributors, the people that came in and played little parts or sang backup vocals, they've all brought their own musical sensibilities to it. So I think people can hear all sorts of stuff in there.
Yeah.
There's a saxophone solo that Ariel does in the song Empty World, where I think we were kind of trying to... Ariel, you had a particular sound you were going for in that, right?
Yeah, I was going for an X-Ray Specs saxophone solo.
There you go.
Right.
Oh.
Right. Okay. So like post-punk kind of stuff. By the way, when I say the Sadies, I also would like to suggest that phrasing in terms of phrasing, it also reminds me of Rick White and his work with the Sadies. So there's like a couple. That's just me where I'm coming from. People, again, ruining the record as always. People can bring their own stuff to the thing and figure out where it's coming from. I just appreciate its point of view, its humor. The sounds are all over the place. You've done a wonderful job. It doesn't sound, when people hear self-produced and first self-produced, they might be like, well, I'm going to push play on this with with some low standards. It sounds amazing. Like you all did a wonderful job. So I just wanted to say all those things for what it's worth.
It's worth a lot.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you so much.
You're welcome. Now, it's time to get down to business and promotion. We need to tell people where they can learn more about the Burning Hell and Garbage Island. And I'm happy to say, I think you've got a relatively new label home as well. Who wants to be the corporate shill? Who wants to talk about where to send people to learn more about the Burning Hell and this
I can
record?
do this. I'll do this. So this record is coming out June 24th on You've Changed Records in North America and BB Island in Europe and rest of world. You can learn more about The Burning Hell by going to www.theburninghell.com. The album is also available on all streaming services, and we recommend you check it out on Bandcamp at theburninghell.bandcamp.com.
How was that? That was the greatest corporate shilling I've ever heard in my life. Unbelievable. Very practiced. That was really wonderful. And you've got tour dates coming up as well, right?
That's right. We do. Let me think about that one.
Well, you don't have, sorry, I'm not looking for the full itinerary. I just meant if you can think of when it starts, that would be good. But
Sure. We're heading out west in July. I think our first on-tour release show will be at the Vancouver Island Music Festival, and then we're sort of touring various parts of Canada on and off for the rest of the summer and early fall, and then in September we head over to Germany, Austria, and the Czech Republic and the UK.
Okay. And tour dates on your website. Did you mention your socials, Ariel?
Oh, no. You can find The Burning Hell on Twitter at The Burning Hell Band. Yes. And on Instagram at The
We don't tweet.
Burning Hell. It's either The Burning Hell or The Burning Hell Band.
No, I think
Just look it up on the
It's just
internet.
at The Burning Hell, I believe, on Instagram.
I don't know.
Okay.
If
right.
I may. But people can look all these things up. Obviously, I just like to get them going. I know people know how to find things. I just like to give them a head start. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's a great idea.
I appreciate it.
So
Absolutely.
before we go, I'd like to ask you if we can go out on a song. And I'd like one of you to pick the song, and the other one then gets veto power. If they don't like the choice, you have a short debate, and then we pick a new song. It's never happened, really. Actually, there have been there weren't debates, just like two people have agreed, and then one of them changes their mind midstream, and we go out on that. So it is possible there could be a soft veto. So I want to, because Ariel just did all the heavy lifting with the corporate shilling, I'm going to defer to Matthias to pick the song. But again, Ariel, you have full veto rights. So Matthias, can you pick a song for us to go out on?
I know we talked about Dirty Microphones and we talked about Bird Queen of Garbage Island, but I was thinking we could go out on No Peace, the first song on the record. But Ariel, feel free to veto that.
No, I like that song. Yeah.
It's a
I like them all.
very, very catchy song. I have to say, Matthias, the first line or verse jars me.
It jars you?
Let me see if I can paraphrase it. The sunlight hit my face like a belt slap from the parents from the olden days. Is that the line? Did I get it right? Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm just off the top of my head. Yeah. My children love that song and they love it. But I often they haven't asked about it, but I wonder if they wonder what that means. That's all. It's a great song. I've tainted it by going dark.
You go in dark. I mean, it's a dark song.
No, it is a dark song. It is a wonderful way to kick it off. And there's a nice reference to Leo Tolstoy.
Absolutely.
Okay, get over the first line, everyone. I shouldn't
Just
have
get
even
over
brought
the
it
first line. Don't think about it that way. And you know what? Maybe I'm glad that corporal punishment isn't a subject that's come up in your parenting experience so far. But historically, it's come up for a lot of people.
Yes. No,
And
absolutely.
so,
No.
yeah.
I think it's a brilliant song, and it's great. You've really well arranged. I get no peace in my head all the time. And so let's end. And
I feel like you're trying to veto this one.
No, I'm not. Let's go to it. This is great. It's great. I love it. It's got lots of interesting childlike imagery because there's like references to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and of course Ringo Starr, who people might know as the star of the Thomas the Train Engine, which is a children's show. So let's go out on it right now, and it's a little riff on Ringo's favorite phrase, "Peace
Yeah.
and love, love and peace."
I hope everyone enjoys this jarring, childish song.
Yeah, I think I really set it up well. Sorry, everyone. Here's No Peace by The Burning Hell. It's brilliant. Ariel, Matthias, it couldn't possibly not end awkwardly. So thank you for being on the show, my awkward show, and I wish you the best of luck in all things in the future.
Thanks for
so
having
much,
us.
Bish. Thanks for having us.
Sunlight hits my face like a belt strap slap from the parents in the olden days. And I wake up into the morning wishing I was an orphan. Why do I get the feeling something awful is about to happen? Why do I get the feeling we need heroes, jumping hurdles, Ninja Turtles, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers to save the day? No peace, no peace, no peace, no peace, no peace. My eyes and open up my laptop. I see peace in the Middle East flash across my browser. I see America sign the treaty. I see Mario and Luigi finally defeated Bowser. And I say, hey Ariel, wake up and check this out. Ringo was right, it's all peace and love now, love and peace. And she says, you're dreaming, you're just dreaming. Go back to sleep. There's no peace, no peace, no peace, no peace. Neither the time nor the place for peace. So put away your puppy dogs and your rainbows. You can't put a dent in the 1% with hugs. You can't smash the fascists with sappiness. No, nor the Nazis, whether old school or neo. So I'll leave you with a line I stole from Leo. There can be no peace for us, only misery and the greatest happiness, but no peace. 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 No peace.
Oh, once again, very, very special thanks to my old friends Ariel Sherritt and Matthias Kalm from The Burning Hell for being back on this show, this time to appear on the 696th episode of Creative Control, which is part of the Entertainment One podcast network and is available wherever you get your podcasts. If you can't find an episode that you're looking for on your favorite platform there, or if you want to learn more about me, sign up for my monthly newsletter, which I'm behind on, sorry. Please visit my website, vishkhanna.com. You can like Creative Control on Facebook, follow the show on Twitter @VishCreative, or you can follow me directly on Instagram and on Twitter @VishKhanna. Also, please visit patreon.com/Creative Control to make a flexible monthly donation to keep this podcast going. It's the primary source of revenue, the lovely generosity of people like you who listen to the show and support it on Patreon. $6 or more a month grants you access to exclusive content that I post on the Patreon. Some of it is derived from the new episodes. Some of it is from older episodes, or rather, sorry, older archives of mine. Is there such a thing as a newer archive? I think archives are inherently older. I could probably stop talking about this. It's not interesting. Anyway, my point is I have archives of audio interviews I did that precede this show. Sometimes I post those. In this particular case, there is fresh bonus content with Ariel and Matthias talking about their current obsessions. So if it's not already, as you hear this, if it's not already on the Patreon feed, it will be soon. It's probably there by now, actually. But anyway, so that's an example. And it's just us doing a little bit of overtime after our interview. So $6 or more a month on the Patreon grants you access to that kind of stuff. But you can donate more than $6. You can donate less than $6. And whatever your amount, you can change it every month or whenever you want. Sometimes you can pay for the whole year, and then you don't have to think about it. So appreciate the support. And if you're interested in receiving a Creative Control t-shirt in exchange for that generosity, please message me on Patreon, and I'll get you one while supplies last. Again, patreon.com/Creative Control. Thanks again to Pizza Trocadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee in Guelph, and Granddad's Donuts in Hamilton, their in-kind support for the show. Thanks to my friend Jim Guthrie for lending me music to use on this show. You can learn more about Jim at jimguthrie.org. And finally, thank you for listening to this episode with The Burning Hell. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're a fan of theirs, I hope you learned some things. If you don't know who they are, I also hope you learned some things. Thanks also for subscribing to this podcast, or following it and telling your friends all about it and asking them to consider doing the same so you can have a discussion about it later or something. Anyway, I must go. I have to go pick up my daughter from her last brownies meeting. I'll talk to you later. Bye for now.